Hello, Marty.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, Philip.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
All right, you staying out of trouble?
Hell no.
Yeah, good for you.
Well,
You're looking good.
thank you. You too. It's been a while.
Yeah, looks like you're enjoying retirement.
I'm learning.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I still have my days.
Yeah,
Lots of
well,
stuff in that office that I miss.
you worked for a long time to get into work mode. Now you got to work to get out of it, I guess.
Yeah, it's changing cultures.
Yeah.
So how are things going with you guys, your team?
Well, it's just Matt and me pretty much. Rachel's still part of the team, but she's working for Laura while Dangerous Buildings is in a little bit of a holding pattern. So, um, yeah, we're getting along, getting our
Okay, 'cause I
inspection
know
done.
Laura can use the help.
Yeah. She's got a lot of work to do. So, oh yeah, we're doing all right.
Good. How is Matt?
He's well. Yeah, he's off today, but anyway, he'll be back tomorrow.
Oh, if you would say hello for me,
I will.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
And to Rachel too.
She's on vacation, so
Oh, well, that's her problem.
she's off enjoying herself someplace. Hopefully.
Well, good for her.
I believe Andy is still up in the council meeting. Still hearing testimony on the energy code.
Yeah,
I think they're about done.
Yeah. I was kind of watching it.
I had expected to be there, but then something came up here, so I just skipped it and came to this. Hello, Carol.
Hi, how are you doing?
All right.
You're looking good.
Well, thank you.
Refreshed, retired.
I wish I could say the same thing, but I can't see you.
Well, I know my camera has not worked the whole of the COVID experience, which in retrospect may have been a blessing. You know, we need to get a few more people.
So Carol, Andy kind of asked me to get this started, not knowing if you or he would be here. So I'm just going to not like I had any control, but I'm going to let you have it and kind of.
Well, I'm gonna try to watch the quorum thing,
Right.
but it's a little bit hard for me to. Looks like we have 7 people at the meeting so far, but not enough commissioners. So we'll wait. We usually have to wait a few minutes.
Okay.
We at least need to wait for Molly and Nate. Molly and Nate are the 2 that have been working on the annual report, which is one of the first things on our agenda. The council committee, we can chat while we're waiting. The council committee that was considering this building energy code update, interesting discussion. They went into the staff presentation was a long presentation about how many additional staff people they'd have to do this if the council approved it.
It's sort of circling the wagons.
Well, I just thought it was an interesting way to start. It was, I mean, I'm very supportive of city staff saying they need more help because I believe usually they do. And it is a bad idea to pass things and then not staff them. I'm sure you can attest to that, Jerry.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just an interesting way to start the whole discussion, was that they had to have 7 more staff people if they wanted to do this.
Well, sooner or later, city council and management is going to have to make a decision where they stand on this and whether or not they plan for increasing staff over some short period of time.
I agree. I also agree it didn't sneak up on them.
This is true. They've had 2 years now to consider it.
Yeah.
And I know that their city planning is adding up a bunch of staff, but they're not adding new staff. They're filling vacancies that have come up over the last 2 years, for the most part.
Yeah.
So what is this that they're planning to do or talking about doing?
Pardon me?
What are they talking about doing? It's going to require more staff.
The new energy codes.
Yeah. They they said they would have to do more inspection cycles, but and we'll discuss this later. But one of the things I noticed, a little slip in the presentation, that they would have to do some of the cycles, that they would have to do one additional cycle and a couple of the cycles that they're supposed to be doing but aren't doing now. So it's not entirely one thing. Not entirely. Okay, looks like we're getting close. Let's go ahead and let me see how many commissioners. All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, and let's move right into our first agenda item, which is the annual report. I see that Nate and Molly are both present, and then we'll do the minutes and all later. So I'm turning it over to Nate and Molly.
All right. Woohoo! Has everybody got a copy
Of what?
of the annual report? You should have gotten a copy.
Did that go out just to commissioners?
Yes.
No, I don't. The rest of us don't have.
Oh, yeah, because it's a draft. It's a draft. Sorry.
Right.
It was a working draft, so it probably didn't. It probably only went out to commissioners. So, are commissioners here who have seen it and have comments, edits, additions? Not wordsmithing, but like ideas they hate, they love, things they want to add. Can Rachel, have you got a copy of it? Can you share screen? Is Rachel there?
Philip said Rachel's on vacation.
Oh, okay. I can, oh, sorry, Rachel, sitting on a couch. Got it. Is Laura there? Is Laura still on vacation?
Yep, she's on vacation too.
Okay, Andy, are you there?
Nope, he's at the meeting.
He's in city council.
Oh, he's still at the city council. Okay, I don't know that I have the capacity to share screen with everybody. I will try. I will certainly try. Can people see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. That was easy. All right. The structure that we came up with, and please feel free to jump in, Nate, was something that Ben and Nate came up with, I think, and we discussed the last time around as the who and the where and the how. And so we came up with this chart. And so the written portion of this chart, is aligned with the chart. The written portion is aligned with the chart. So we discuss mobility. What are the needs? Here are the solutions. Here are the partners that we can speak to. There are a couple of things here that need confirmation from OEQ, such as numbers, like 35% of all greenhouse gas emissions in KC Metro. Is that an accurate number? And so there are a couple of yellow highlighted things here. In the mobility sector, under solutions, we had the Bike KC master plan and the extension of the streetcar, although I would say that that's not a big solution because it's not made for large numbers of people. And then there are equity questions here. And one of those, which I think is a really big bonus that we can mention, is the zero fare buses that have extended after the pandemic. And do we have a funding mechanism to keep that going into the future? Comments on mobility? We've also linked to the KC climate resilience plan on sectors where we think, because we're trying to promote that plan in our annual report as well. So that's where you'll see these numbers refer back to the city plan. Intentionally locating services along primary corridors. Are there any solutions here that we missed?
Molly,
Yeah?
this is Jerry.
Yeah.
Just one note. If you're going to link to the climate plan,
Okay.
depending upon when the annual report or the climate plan is published, there
Right.
might be a need for a caveat in this plan that says we're linking to the draft plan as of certain date or
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. Do we know if there's a date for publication on that?
They're
Going public?
hoping to get to city council in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jerry. We will absolutely do that. We'll put a little note that says links are to the draft plan.
Well, I was just saying, when this thing is when the annual report is actually published, you should update that element in case the climate plan is still a draft. You can
Okay.
refer to it as a draft. If it's approved, then no worry about it.
Okay. Great. Do we want to go through each and every one of these? Happy to do so if people want to do that.
The mobility,
Go ahead, Marty.
okay, the mobility, it might be interesting to bring the services closer to the people. So they don't have to go as far. Like when I was a kid, there was a grocery store about 3 houses away, and they could be smaller and have the necessities, and people could walk to them.
Right. There is a line in here. We just passed it that talks about that in infrastructure. That here it is. It's number 2 here in solutions. Intentionally co-locate grocery shopping, childcare, community, financial services, all of these things along primary corridors. Is that you're
That would
wanting to
help.
get?
That would help, but we had them on.
You wanted to get it into the neighborhoods?
You could have a grocery store on every corner, and you could just, when a house comes up, we could purchase it and turn it into that, or leave it out to somebody.
Okay.
Marty, I think the spirit of the comment that's in there is like sort of that vein. I don't,
good.
this.
Okay.
It just feels a little, like sort of nano critiquing. Like I think the broad gist is like we want
Okay.
access to services as much as
Right.
possible.
Great.
And we could put a
There
little
was a-
something that says that.
There was a comment that I made much farther down on the document about pop-up farmers markets. That if you had, and I think it was in your circular economy part of the discussion.
Mhm.
So maybe when we get there, that'll address it a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Increasing fees for downtown parking. We're already seeing that at the farmers market. And then limiting free parking spaces along transit routes. Routinely offer event transit options. Thank you, Carol. Since I don't actually go to a stadium, I don't know about these things. But, and we may be seeing, there's Andy. You survived. Okay. Well, we want to hear all about it, but we're going through the annual report. Please feel free to chime in. One of my thoughts on the annual report, particularly in transportation, is in 4 years we've got FIFA coming, and it's going to be lots of people, and a lot of them are going to come from Europe where they have really good transit, and they could be appalled when they get here. But can we use that? Can we somehow piggyback on whatever's going to happen that the city does to get ready for this, to make sure that we're driving it along sustainable lines, and maybe things that will last longer than just the FIFA events? And so I think I put that in here somewhere about potential partners for the future. You know, I don't know that they have any money yet, but they might get money, and could we potentially have a role in advising them on how to make whatever they do for the FIFA events sustainable into the future? Partners for this that are already in place are KCATA and Bike Walk KC, Mid-America Regional Council. Oh, here's the, under potential new partner could be the group organizing by the FIFA. And so for Spotlight, I put down the new streetlights, the LED streetlights, and the free busing. Does anybody else have any transportation spotlight they think should go here? Things that we've already done that we want to call attention to that are wonderful? Yes, so I didn't put, we could put the trolley in there, but I didn't do that. Because I don't think of that as a strong transportation solution. Another thing, have we talked about before, the scooters? Scooters are not loved in all places. But there's more scooters happening in various places. Might that be part of a mobility? And part of the challenge for certain parts of town is that in order to get a scooter, you have to have a credit card. So it speaks to a bigger challenge. What do people feel? How many people in this group have ridden a scooter? All right.
No, don't
No.
intend to.
So do people hate them?
But I agree. I agree that the whole idea about not having a credit card is a problem for scooters and bikes, actually, for both, right?
Yeah.
I see we have a note in the chat about the NFL draft. That is another really big
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
I didn't really appreciate how big a deal that was, but it was pointed out to me that it was an enormous deal.
Right. That's another one where I am not up on the draft. So yes, that could be. How many people are coming to the NFL draft?
It'd be tens of thousands for sure.
Really? Okay.
Yes. A massive event.
Massive event, bigger than the soccer?
No,
Okay.
but it's real big.
Okay, so we will need transportation there as well. Andy, who do we reach out to with these big events?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not heard internally, they haven't really, not a lot of committees or opportunities to chime in on those yet, but stay tuned for that.
Okay, so that's a good suggestion too, adding the football in there. Any other spotlights on things the city's doing well on?
We might highlight KCATA if we wanted to. They've got more electric buses, and they also have pretty interesting flex service that is kind of a, I don't know, it's just an interesting service that they offer, that they have buses that'll you can kind of schedule coming much closer to your
Okay,
home.
all right.
Flex service and electric buses. And I don't know that that's worth adding, but just a suggestion.
Okay, we'll put it down there. Okay, so the next category was homes and buildings. So Andy, you weren't here earlier. There are things highlighted in yellow that we need confirmation from OEQ. So is 35% greenhouse gases in KC due to transportation? Is that an accurate statement?
I'd have to look at the latest inventory, but that sounds roughly about right.
Okay, so these things in the report that have yellow highlights are the OEQ. Is this accurate?
Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at them and correct them or update them if we need to.
Okay, thank you. There's another one here with energy consumption and buildings. So we have old housing stock or in need of repair and energy efficiency, retrofitting. We're going to get rid of all acronyms because they are not loved. And so there's a link here to this racial wealth gap on on home values. So these are the equity needs. I think we on the commission are sort of familiar with them. These numbers come out of the U.S. Census.
Molly,
Yeah.
the page above, if you could scroll back up,
Yep.
you just made the change to reference low and middle income communities. The vernacular is low and moderate income communities.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And moderate income communities. Barriers include lack of down payments, credit, affordability. So solutions, and these again refer to the climate protection resilience plan. And Jerry had pointed out we have to make sure when this goes public versus the plan, so that we may have to put an asterisk here and say refers to draft plan if it's not published yet. But that's what these numbers are referring to. And another comment was, do we want to mention the building codes here?
Maybe.
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 So create RFPs for high performance firms to create net zero community resource and resilience hubs in every district of the city. Home energy score and building energy for advertising any real estate transactions. And I think, don't we want to didn't we talk about including that in rental information as well? So that when you rent a house, you can, you know what that house costs in terms of utilities. Investing in passive homes, passive neighborhoods. And also change how we talk about homes rather than their monetary value. Energy efficiency, school districts, sidewalks, what are the assets that are non-monetary? Partner with developers to engage and move climate resilience into the professional community. I think I've shared before that I'm on the Lewis White Real Estate Board, which is a UMKC board that advises their school of real estate brokerage stuff. And they have annual development symposium for continuing education. And we've been able to make the theme of those symposium over the last 2 years. 1 year was sustainability, and last year was affordability, and it's going to continue this year. But that is a way to intersect with the building community. They come to these things because it's put on by the building community. They need it for continuing credit. It might be a way to intersect with developers who we always talk about as the developers, and perhaps we need to, have more of a relationship there. But Jeremy Knowles spoke at the symposium on sustainability, and there was a tremendously positive response to it from the development community, one of which was, wow, this is very cool. To which all of us on the commission are going to say, wow, where have you been? But I think we should engage there because there is interest. We just need to find that intersection. Okay. At the very end here, prescribed financial initiatives, and under spotlights, I think I put the trust neighborhoods, but what I put this may not, you can see what you think about it. Carol has some information on this, but incentivizing Black-owned banks, and that may not be the answer to having more affordable credit for.
I'll share what I found out. I was able to talk to my friend who worked on this, and he said it was tough. He said that they did work with the Kansas City banking community and churches and credit unions to see what they could do to get more affordable credit available in some of the areas that are underserved, and that they really got nowhere. And he said, and we talked a little bit, and he said it's the profit motive of the banks. It's just, and it's not going to matter who owns them. They're just not an altruistic.
Right.
It's tough. So he thought that it is great to incentivize minority ownership for other reasons, but it's not necessarily something that's going to make more financing, affordable financing available. And they were looking at even small loans. They weren't trying to get big loans. So, and they did a really.
Those are just excuses. I mean,
well, they may be excuses.
Yeah, and they're. I mean, it just goes to show the underpinnings of how closely tied and hued capitalism is to upholding the racial hierarchy in the country. And there are plenty of other lending, especially CDFIs, community development financial institutions, that do specific micro financing to BIPOC individuals, and they don't really seem to have a problem with it. So, like, I don't know, and this isn't, you're just relaying what someone said to you, Carol, so I'm not, like, this isn't about you. It's about excuses. I've heard it a million times, so they get tiresome after a while.
Yeah, they were specifically trying to find services that could replace payday loans. And so they were looking for loans for things like auto repairs and that kind of thing. And they were getting no traction from any of the people they could contact and work with, is basically what he said.
Yeah, and I'm sure they were all white.
Well, perhaps we need to bring in the Grameen Bank. I mean, I look at all this stuff on an international level, but I wouldn't think about these micro lending things that you see in developing countries here in our neighborhood. So maybe this, rather than black-owned banks, should be incentivizing low-income access to credit and funding.
Well, maybe so, maybe so. But I don't think, I mean, I don't know what all works, and sounds like Nate knows some things that are possible. I just checked with my friend, and he said what their experience was that they would have people who were willing to talk to them, but when it got down to brass tacks, they just really weren't willing to make loans available at low rates to people that didn't have credit history, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's part. I don't want us to sort of get hung up on this, but like I would just encourage members of the committee or a commission to look into credit scores and their racist history, just like work requirements with things like food stamps and access to other benefits. Nothing in this country is untouched by racism, and I would just encourage people to investigate some of the things we've been discussing over the past 5 minutes here. I mean, there's physical redlining, and this is what's called financial redlining.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know who your friend is, Carol, but they're repeating the same tired talking points that are upholding the system that is leading to an incredible gap in wealth creation.
Who's actually tried to do this.
What? Yeah, I know, and that's the thing is there are alternative and disruptive models to trying to do this, and they're still trying to do this. They're not throwing up their hands and going, well, guess they just don't want to give loans to black people because they're not going to make us enough money.
So
I think what we ought to would be great to be able to identify what some of those other possibilities are. You know,
CDFIs, they are an emerging and significant component for moderate sized lending. And I'm not talking about the very small micro loans that you've been talking about. I mean,
yeah,
that's definitely a gap. But when we're talking about loans for people to start a business, when we're talking about loans for people to get a home loan or other sort of investment, like those institutions are starting to step more into the space of providing loans and capital to people and using very different ways of scoring the risk, not relying solely on credit scores. So it just, again, I encourage everyone.
Isn't that trust neighborhoods?
Trust neighborhoods? Is that a CDFI?
There's many CDFIs. There's many CDFIs, yes.
Yeah, Gloria can probably speak to the breadth of them in town.
Yeah, so CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution.
Right.
So it typically comes from, like, right now, Westside's in the process of trying to certify to become a CDFI. But like all CAP, I think you hear about Ruben Alonso around town that's doing some stuff with, and he's a little more creative. But he's also built a strong CDFI. There are other organizations like Ivanhoe that has a CDFI, or some organizations north. So the CDFI, though, like, sorry, the gentleman was saying, is just that they have a way to calculate risk. Like in my case, if I was renting to a household owner in the neighborhood to do a small minor home repair, I could take a second lien against the house. So I wouldn't be taking, they're like $10,000 loans, but something like $5,000 or less, $2,500 or less. So yeah. So if there are any questions, I'm sorry.
Jerry,
Yeah, two quick things. One is procedural. Somebody's microphone is open and there's lots of competing noise that's coming from someone. Makes it difficult to hear. Specifically, I have a question for Gloria. Gloria, we used to have the Community Reinvestment Act that provided teeth in making sure that lenders, not just CDFIs, which have been around for 20 years, but CDFIs or lenders in general, did provide assets, some kinds of investment opportunities in terms of financing opportunities to low and moderate income communities. Gloria, are there any teeth left in that act after President Trump's administration went after it? Can you hear me? Molly, you're on mute.
Okay, am I off mute? Can you hear me?
Now you are.
Yep, yep.
Okay, you are correct that much of the teeth that was in it is gone. And they're in the process right now of renaming it and reimagining it. So the CRA credit or the CRA credits as we knew them 10 years ago, 5 years ago, are no longer there. But they are trying to reclaim how it's going to be rolled out. And so it's yet to be determined. Jerry's things. We're on a yet to be determined.
Is that a HUD initiative?
Now it's a bank initiative. It's the CRA credit, the community credits for what you get. Like Jerry said, you used to have to do so many loans to low income families and so much investment in community development and that kind of thing. And the banks aren't being scored the way they were 6 years ago. And that is mostly due to Trump's administration tearing apart some of the stuff that was in place to help.
Okay. In terms of the report, I was just putting this in there so that we would have a discussion about it. And do we want to put something in our report that says we want the city to incentivize and follow through on finding more credit access for low and moderate income? Do we just want that? We can decide whether we want that to, we can recommend CDFIs, but is that something people want in the report?
I mean, I think it's a good thing to have, but. Sorry.
Okay. We will work on this last bit and make it more digestible. So partners, there's KC Housing Authority, KC Tenants, Climate Action KC, West Side Housing, Jerusalem Farm, Trust Neighborhoods, Builders Association, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. These are people working in this space. Is there anybody we missed? Anybody we don't think should be on there? Okay, so for spotlights, I was spotlighting Ben's idea about having, and it comes out of this, the CPRP, having community block captains. Although that is an idea, that's not something that's happened. And then there's also trust neighborhoods. Are there other neighborhoods? Are there other building successes that we want to highlight? Jerry or Gloria, do you know of any that are happening that are particularly noteworthy?
This is Gloria. Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderfully.
This is Gloria. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marlboro neighborhood, I think. And
Now we
Cutting in
can.
and out.
You're cutting out.
Please. The trust. Can you hear me? Likens Neighborhood Trust.
Likens Neighborhood Trust, yes.
Okay, okay. And then Marlboro. Those are the two that stand
And
out to me.
Marlboro?
Yeah, and Marlboro Neighborhood. And they have a trust, and I don't know the name of it, quite frankly.
I'll find out what it is.
Yeah.
And like. Okay, we'll get those correctly. And this is actually not a spotlight, but a solution, a potential solution to put up here somewhere. Okay, anything to add on housing and buildings? Like nobody gets a TIF unless they're building something affordable?
Molly?
Yeah.
One quick question, if you could scroll up just a moment.
Yes.
Hold on. The last bullet point that says for discussion,
Yes.
incentivizing black-owned. Do you want to limit the scope of what this report speaks to black-owned banks and not black-owned, other minority, women-owned?
Yeah, no. That's just a bullet for discussion to generate the discussion we just had. I'm going to take that out and talk about not black-owned, but incentivizing financial access to low and moderate income minorities, the gamut.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't mind me. I'm running 2 steps behind normally.
That's it. No, that's fine. Why is bridging the gap in there?
Bridging should have a G on the end.
I know, but I don't even know why it's in there. I don't think it's supposed to be in there. It's not a housing spotlight. Okay. So circular economy, particularly food and waste. And so factoids up here about just how much food goes into gets wasted and how much of that lands in the landfill and generating methane, and how our landfills are filling up, all of which is bad, and we need to get it into a circular system where food is going into compost and somehow compost is getting back to neighborhoods. So you can do circular economy on many things. This one is just focused on food as an example. And it speaks to food insecurity and solid waste issues, nutritional issues, all kinds of things. So these are the solutions. Reinvesting energy savings into further initiatives, fully fund the urban forest master plan, maybe with some of these energy savings, continue to incentivize production of locally grown food and increase the scale, facilitate, these are the pop-up markets, Marty, getting fresh food into neighborhoods. Now,
yeah, what was I going to say?
I have some information on that because I've spoken to Cultivate KC about pop-up markets because we're trying to get one on campus. And you have to guarantee a farmer $200 in sales. And if they don't make $200 from that pop-up, then the host organization has to pay the difference because they want farmers to make a minimum amount to make it worth their time. Something to think about with pop-up markets, where you pop them up, are you going to have enough people come and purchase? Has anyone else had experience hosting or supporting a pop-up? No? Okay. addressing codes that prohibit lawn, incentivize planting natives, lawn removal. It's been pretty dramatic in the Southwest and for decades now. But that's a codes thing. Marty?
Yeah, I thought of what it, when you were talking about compost and that sort of thing, Missouri Organic is doing a real good job of kind of what they're doing is collecting plastic packaged food and running it through an incredible process. However, something has to be done about packaging because the compost you get has little scraps of plastic in it.
Right.
And I have no idea what that means totally, but it seems to me that I really don't want it in my garden. But you know, it's what's available there. So and I applaud what they're doing, but something ought to be done with packaging itself, and how you know, if we put some energy into it, we could probably figure out a better way to do it. That's it.
Well, so packaging stuff comes packaged from outside the metro. How much of this food is getting sort of packaged? Doesn't it come to the warehouse already packaged? So it's sort of outside of.
Yeah, some of it even comes from Wichita, or you know, they're bringing it in semi trailer loads, and it's stuff that's probably past its label date, and so you know they're having to do something with it, and so they're shipping it in, and they've got this huge process that stinks, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing for what it is.
So Andy, do you have an update at all about Melissa's citywide composting project?
So not citywide, we did implement composting within City Hall. So that's where we were starting first off. So we have bins now on every floor, more or less.
I'm sorry, I meant curbside.
You know, I understand. Yeah, so there's nothing new on curbside quite yet. That's still being kind of discussed, talked about. To be honest with you, a lot of the deliberations right now with council related to curbside is more about trash carts and recycling carts than it is about composting. But that it's not being dropped off the radar. Just there's a shift in focus right now.
I'm actually working on a large NSF grant around that, and I need to talk to her. Okay.
Yep.
So our circular economy, incentivizing locally grown, the codes, investing in circular system of waste reduction, recovery, composting, close the gap between food waste and food insecure. That can be market and giving.
That's all.
What? Okay. And any codes that might be impacting municipal scale composting, and how to increase participation in recycling. I don't know where this one went in there, and maybe this is my own comment because I've been making this comment almost as long as I've been on the commission. Turning the Parks and Recreation Department into Parks, Recreation, and Agriculture. Regionally support heartland conservation. Other things, circular economy.
There's a you know, you talked about large scale composting. There are some codes that inhibit small scale composting.
Okay.
They make it smaller than is necessary.
Oh, here it is. Codes blocking residential food production and composting.
Right. And also they could be composting more of their own leaves if we weren't limited to a 10 by 10 size, 10 foot by 10 foot by 4 foot or
Okay.
something like that, 54 inches.
Utilize empty lots for urban agriculture, community orchards, neighborhood composting, increase leaf composting.
Yep.
Anybody else? Thoughts on things circular? Marty, have we got all the right people? Bridging the gap after the harvest, mow hives, cultivate, Kansas City Farm School, composting collective, can be, Heartland. All species. We need all species in there.
Sure. Heartland All Species Project.
Maybe Giving Grove.
Yes.
Okay. We have just an incredible abundance of people in this space. What we need is some funds to lubricate pulling them all together and getting the codes aligned. So spotlight, there are probably better spotlights here. There was Heartland's tree implementing the urban forest plan and just sort of a generic neighborhood agriculture. Are there other more specific spotlights on circular economy and food waste?
I think you might put Antioch Urban Growers
Okay.
on your list there.
Oh, on here.
Partners.
Okay.
And Sankara Farm.
Sankara.
Farms or farm.
I mean, there are tons of farms on there that we could, that can go on there.
Yeah, I mean, is the more the merrier? Is it better? Is it better to have that many or?
What do people feel like? I just got off a long phone call with KC Farm School listing every one of these folks. There are many, many, many of them. Do we want them all here in the annual report? I can make a whole nother column that's just farms. There's Ophelia's and the Westport, cultivates Westport, and the list goes on and on.
Well, it would serve to let people know just how much is going on.
Okay. Okay, I can put lots more farms that are herbivore.
Yeah, there you go.
Because they are actively building a very large composting facility. Okay. And other spotlights, we could put Marty up here for building the most number of Johnson Sioux composters.
Yeah. Thank you.
I actually think that's worth highlighting.
All right.
I don't think we shouldn't just bypass that.
Okay.
Yeah, Antioch Urban Growers, KC Farm School,
Sankara.
And Sankara Farms went together and got a grant to put in a certain number of Johnson Sues and then do some experimenting with them on actual beds. So that's there, and we really haven't publicized it well enough. And let's see, we're calling it community. Let me look that up.
Your USDA grant?
Yeah, we're calling it, yeah, I'll figure that out.
Okay, you can send it to me. All right, anything else on the food? Food circular. So the last one, I added this because I actually think up at the table, whoa, don't anybody get sick. I added this onto the table. I actually think it could be one of the most important ones, and that's communication. Communication, communication, communication on how we get buy-in. So there are certainly equity issues with this. Digital divide, different newspapers, how do we reach out and communicate with various communities, and provide capacity building for resilient neighborhoods, all the things we talk about wanting to do, but we talk about it amongst ourselves. And how to communicate quick stuff. We've talked for years about doing a public service announcements, doing a blog of stories, putting it on the sides of buses. There are American Green, Flatland, there are a number of podcasts. Community captains, climate captains could certainly be disseminating this information through neighborhoods. So much like you would have an emergency, you know, if there's a block captain who tells you what to do during a hurricane, you know, we could have that be sort of these climate captains who can inform their neighborhoods. And so Office of Environmental Quality is definitely a partner on this. Center for Neighborhoods, that's UMKC's Urban Community Outreach Center. Casey Can Compost, Kansas City Public Schools. Oh, we should put Kansas City Public Libraries on here. Where's Jensen? They were talking about doing composting at the library. So for the spotlight, I put, because I couldn't think of anything, I put Center for Neighborhoods because they have actually trained over 10 cohorts, and each cohort has about 10 people. And they've done over 160 neighborhoods, and these are multi-week-long trainings and capacity building for people in underserved neighborhoods on how to assess the assets in their neighborhood, how to get grants, who to talk to, how to get services. So in terms of communication, I feel like they should be spotlighted. Any other spotlights that people can think of in the communication space about climate, about building resilience? Another one would be the Climate Action KC, but that's regional. Anybody?
Hi all, this is Jeremy Knoll. Just since you asked, I would say that energy code being deliberated, driving people to make their comments would be among actions that people could take pretty easily.
Okay, so is there a group that is communicating the energy codes particularly well? Is that?
Yeah.
Well, I think Jeremy, Jeremy, can you, Jeremy?
Yes.
This is Carol. We're going to talk about the codes here a little bit farther down in the agenda, hopefully at some length. And if you have the time to stick around and help us with that discussion, that'd be great.
I do, except my phone is just about to die. So if I
Oh,
drop
no.
off, I'll come back on a little bit later.
Okay, well, we will watch for you, but we do need to talk to you. We need your insight.
Ready to talk. Ready to talk.
Okay.
And ready to give insight.
I didn't know you were on, Jeremy. I highlighted your presentation a year ago to the block symposium. People loved it. They were just
Oh, great.
blown,
Thanks.
blown
Thanks for
away
the
by it.
feedback.
And I said earlier that the biggest comment from all these developers was, wow, this is so cool. And it's
Nice.
kind of
That's great feedback.
frustrating because you wonder where they've been for a while.
All this.
So if you have, if you can get on and put in the chat or something, who is it that's communicating particularly well about the codes that you think should be spotlighted in the communications section?
Well, it's a consortium of us, but it's being led by Billy Davies with Sierra Club.
Oh, yeah. He's probably on.
Yeah, but it includes U.S. Green Building Council, Westside Housing, like all kinds of folks who have signed on to the push for the newest energy code with strengthening amendments. And then we've been able to work kind of between the group of us to get other letters of support and so forth, and drive people to, like they did today, to come out and advocate with the committees.
Okay, we will think of something better to put, but I just have a note there, codes communication. All right, and then at the end of the report, it talks about call to action, that this report is meant to be something that can be acted on. That's why there are partners there and suggestions. And also a lot of this is very policy driven, and we need to remember that this is down Marty's pathway, that this is a community thing, and we need to be communicating with our entire community about the urgency. So the city has declared an emergency, which is great, but we need to follow up with real action. So that's our annual report. Does anybody have anything we missed? What did we miss? What are the things we missed?
I think you've done a great job. I really do. And I think that, and you and Nate can tell me what you think, that you're going to be ready to actually present something for approval next month.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think maybe we should ask, Andy, we probably need to send out a communication to all the commissioners and ask them to review this document in detail and to provide any input or suggestions to Molly and Nate directly, so that they can have them in a timely fashion. And I'll help write up what that email is, just so you don't have to worry about it. But and that gives them a chance to integrate additional ideas and to organize things in a way that is succinct and workable and effective. So
I'll clean up this version and get it right back to you, and that can go out to all the commissioners, just with the stuff that we talked about today.
Sure, because I think everybody will have some thoughts about some different things, and you guys can sift through it. And
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and we don't want it so long that they won't actually read it.
Right. And I'll be the first to say, we don't expect you to take every little suggestion that we make verbatim. Just include what makes sense to include, and file the rest for future consideration.
All right, and then maybe we can actually look at it at some point and figure out some action items for ourselves for the coming year.
Yeah.
Right. How do I stop sharing? I don't know how to stop. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work, and I really do appreciate that Nate and Molly have taken this on.
Thank you, Molly.
And he does it while juggling babies.
Comment, Nate?
No, he's busy juggling. You can't let that. Oh no, he's muted.
Oh, no. Well,
Okay, Nate.
let's go ahead. Do we have a quorum? I think we do. And let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Do we have any additional corrections to the June minutes? If there are none, can I have a motion to approve as drafted?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I second, Gloria.
Okay. I'm going to assume all commissioners are in favor unless you raise your hand in opposition. So anybody who opposes to adopting the minutes as drafted, raise your hand. Oh, good. All right. We will consider them approved. I wonder if, let's see, is Jeremy still there? I wonder, since we have had this really timely city council meeting about the energy code, if we don't want to skip to that discussion and see if we want to do something in response. The energy code was before council committee today, and I believe it will be coming back in what, 2 weeks, Andy?
Yeah, I'm not clear if they meant 2 weeks or if it's next week. I'll follow up with Councilman Boo to find out for sure. I was trying to gauge that, and I kind of heard a little bit of possibly it could be both ways. So we'll follow up, find out when it is.
Anyway, it gives us an opportunity, because we are meeting today, to get a commission comment to them before they meet to discuss it again. And I'm going to ask whoever. Andy, do you want to try to summarize what the proposal is coming from the staff?
Sure. I'll just kind of do that real quick, and then while we have Jeremy here, he's just looks like he's getting logged on and ready to go. I'll let him give his professional expert opinion about this. But essentially today, it was the first time that City Planning and Development had offered to the public what looked like some proposals or changes to the original recommendation for the 21 code. So the first one was to basically allow R19 or what's bad insulation, or even possibly R21 in the walls, and eliminate the requirement for continuous insulation on the exterior of buildings. So this was one that I think that they were hoping that this concession would kind of maybe build more consensus out there, I think is what their hopes and dreams were. So they kind of put that out there. And I would let Jeremy speak more about what the specifics of that are. And it sounds like there's different pathways and what continuous insulation means, and what maybe some options there. The second thing today that city planning did was to kind of elaborate on what their staff requirements would be, or staff issues administratively. So it was the first time that they really kind of highlighted that they were thinking about an additional 7 staff people, a couple of inspectors, a couple of plan reviewers, to kind of help facilitate the new code. So, I'm sure that was in response to questions that council has been asking. What is the fiscal impact to the department? What's the staffing concern? So, and so city planning was talking about master plans and what kind of workload that'll take on to adjust those. And then what is the workload to accommodate the new code if it's adopted? So they kind of gave a presentation, short few slides to elaborate on that. So today, Councilman Boo had indicated she was not going to be moving forward with a vote. So we sort of knew that ahead of time, but the chair did entertain additional testimony. So a variety of folks provided some more input into this process. And so that's the overall summary. I kind of turn over to Jeremy. What was your take on the proposals and where we go from here?
Yeah, so I guess just one other thing to add about the event or the meeting this afternoon is that Councilman Bunch also joined and had some additional questions for city staff about some of the amendments that we'll talk about in a minute here. And Andy, I wonder a little bit about, or I was wondering while they were talking about additional staff that they need, how much of that they need anyway, since they're kind of coming out of a hole of folks retiring and being understaffed.
Right.
So I don't know that I quite bought that it was like a one-to-one. By changing to this code, we therefore need 7 people. They might already need 6 people, and this is actually, we need 1 more, something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know, but without
They're
arguing the
improving
point.
on the staffing, just from what I'm observing.
Yeah.
They're picking up a few additional people. And frankly, I think the compensation plan for the city that goes into effect August 1st is going to shift upward the pay scales of a lot of positions in the city. And hopefully that'll make it easier for them to bring some new people on board here. So,
Great,
yeah.
very good. So the 2 clarifications that were provided, or I guess one is actually an amendment and the other is a clarification. The amendment, as Andy said, is about keeping to the R19 or R21 requirement, depending on which type of insulation you use. They have a similar impact on the overall performance of the wall. And so that was the amendment. And then the clarification is about looking at existing buildings and what constitutes the trigger for an existing building to suddenly, if you're doing an addition on a building, for example, to have to make the entire rest of the building that you're expanding or whatnot suddenly have to meet the newer code. And so I'll start with the second one because that one's a little bit easier. This is, I personally have no issue with this one. This is just clarifying language about the existing building code and what constitutes a major renovation versus a minor renovation or an addition. Because if somebody's building, you know, a couple more rooms on their house or something like that, it shouldn't necessarily trigger having to re-insulate and get a new air conditioning system and so forth. Those are things that I've dealt with on existing historic buildings all the time, and that makes plenty of sense to me. So the pushback on going to essentially eliminating the requirement for continuous insulation, I was a little frustrated by their explanation for it, because they were leaning heavily on there being some structural changes that happen when you go to a continuous installation, which in my experience as an architect is just not the case. You can certainly design it wrong and then there's some structural problems, but to do a pretty standard continuous installation is a perfectly viable thing that people do all over the place. Let's see, so going to an R20 as your average minimum performance for an exterior wood framed wall essentially brings the code up to the 2012 through 2018 requirements for our climate zone. So what was previously on the books allowed buildings to perform more like the 2009 code, which is an R13 or a 2x4 wall with fiberglass insulation in it. Going to the R20 essentially requires a 2x6 construction. What wasn't discussed in the meeting was that actually in that same table you can still stick with the 2x4 construction R13 so long as you have an R10 continuous insulation outside of that. So there are within the code as it exists some different ways to accomplish the same intent. I guess my personal opinion on this is if this is the only place where ground is given, I still think that this energy code update is a win, especially because it's striking all of the amendments to the residential code that are still on the books, allowing residential projects to perform more like 2009 energy code. But the continuous installation is there for a reason, and it's not as exotic or as unusual as the Home Builders Association and others would claim that it is. We see basically anywhere you drive in Kansas City, you see those green panels, the zip panels. They make that same product with a continuous insulation inside of it. So it's not an unusual or odd thing that we'd be adding to our local workforce or would require a big change in how we design or build. So I guess my personal preference as an architect and somebody who cares a lot about the climate would be that we simply stick with the code as it is with no weakening amendments. But if it came down to it, this being the one concession, I don't love it, but I can live with it personally. Jerry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Doing buildings the way that you're suggesting might be acceptable. How does that have an impact on air quality in terms of heat or heat exchange, et cetera?
Yeah, so part of the reason that that the code is shifting us towards continuous installation is because of thermal bridging. Basically, you've got a piece of wood that's a 2x4 or 2x6, that's your stud, and then you've got an empty space, that's where you put your insulation. And so you've got a portion of the wall that is resistive to the transfer of heat from one side to the other, and then you've got a piece of wood that is essentially not resistant to that because wood has water in it and other things. So going to continuous installation means that you get a much better air seal, a much better water seal, and generally, based on how we build those, means that you can actually back off on the number of studs that you need. If you go to a 24-inch center on with 2x6s, for example, having that essentially the insulation and sheathing act as essentially a diaphragm. Can allow you to actually back off on some of the structure that would otherwise be required. In just to mention it, this is also something that was looked at in Chicago, and the alternative compliance that they offered there was that yes, you can go to an R19 or an R20 in the cavity only, but you must then do a 24-inch on center stud system to reduce the opportunity for those thermal bridges to occur. And I believe that's what's on the books currently in Chicago.
My question, I'm sorry, Jeremy. My question really spoke to air quality issues.
Sure.
Yeah, if we've got that tighter exterior in whatever way we get it, what are the ramifications in this document, in implementing this document with regard to interior air quality and addressing that with exchangers, et cetera?
Yeah, so a tighter envelope means that you have to have a source of outside air coming into the building. In essentially what I think of as our archaic versions of the code, they allowed essentially the leakiness of your home to make up the outside air that you need indoors. Whereas as you get tighter and tighter sort of envelope of the building, the more that has to be done mechanically. So if you can think of like, I'm thinking of the second and Delaware passive home or passive house apartments, for example, those use a mechanical system that brings in a direct amount of outside air, exchanges the tempered air as it's leaving the building with the air that's coming in to reduce the amount of temperature difference that needs to be made up. But again, those are known mechanical systems, and the current in this energy code with no weakening amendments accounts for that in what is required for air changes, what's required for the mechanical performance of the systems. So that is in there on how that's balanced. But I think to your point, and what you're getting at is when you tighten the envelope of a building, you are potentially trapping more of the indoor air inside. And so that's where you rely on things like operable windows and the correct code approved mechanical system to make up for what used to be leakiness through your windows, through your walls, and in Kansas City primarily through your rim joist. Does that answer that, Jerry? I'm trying to keep it high enough level.
Yeah, no, I think I would not want to prolong this discussion, but I guess it comes down to if we are tightening that exterior, will the code require heat exchangers?
Yes, basically,
Okay.
yeah. And I'll just share an anecdote where this almost happened the wrong way, which is where we were. This is when I was running Historic Green a number of years ago, and we were improving a number of homes over in Roland Park. We were getting ready to air seal and insulate a family home, and we thankfully were doing full energy audits as part of that service. And what we found in one of the homes that we were working on, is that they had a cracked heat exchanger in their basement. So right underneath where this family's kids were sleeping was a heat exchanger that was actually dumping carbon monoxide into their basement. And had we gone through and air sealed that without addressing the mechanical system, it could have become both a hazard and potentially a deadly hazard to the family. So making sure that those two things are being dealt with in tandem is what this code is doing. Requiring this mechanical equipment that's going to be paired with the approach on the envelope itself. You got another?
No, I just want to say thank you. I just need to leave for a minute.
Okay, thanks, Jerry.
This is Carol. I wanted to ask a couple of questions that came up just in my mind as I was listening to the discussion. One is, when we're talking about the cost of this in construction versus the cost over the life of the property.
Yeah.
Can you give us a feel for how much difference this might make?
In fact, there's a study that any of you can look up. It's the let's see, if you type in DOE Missouri 2021 IECC cost comparison, what you'll see there is they've done a deep dive analysis of the additional cost to improve the envelope, to add the extra insulation, to change mechanical systems, whatever's needed. And the methodology that they use is agreed upon with the Home Builders Association nationally. The numbers we've seen locally from the home builders, I would describe as thumb on the scale numbers, where they're doing the most ridiculous expensive things in order to meet the energy code. The actual numbers that we're seeing from the Department of Energy's study for Missouri is in the range of $6,600 per home to make all the improvements that are necessary. And that is compared to the 2018 code. There are other studies that show differently I mean, not differently for earlier versions of the code is what I mean. What they also include in the Department of Energy report is essentially a homeowner focused month over month cash flow analysis. So so this is going to include everything from your mortgage rate to the increasing cost of energy over time to all kinds of other factors that will come into play. And what that shows is that the cash flow for homeowners is about 1.9 years before they're positive. So before you're essentially you're saving more money than you would have been spending, including all of your utility bills as that escalates. If you use the simple payback, which does not include almost any of those, it's just straight up looking at energy versus first cost. That one for Missouri, forgive me if I flub this by 10% or something, but I believe it's 8.9 years, just using a simple with no escalation, with none of the actual kind of real world factors included. That's the numbers that the Home Builders Association exclusively uses. Again, because it makes it look like it makes it look like there's no return on it. But when you include all of the other factors that we do when we're considering buying a home, or when a family is considering buying a home, the return is within 2 years.
Okay.
Jeremy, just one quick note. I think there is definitely intent there on the part of the real estate community. Because I know for a fact, I used to have a real estate license, and every real estate agent and broker carries a calculator which calculates in about 10 seconds compound interest impacts. And you can compare those to simple interest impacts in a matter of 30 seconds or a minute.
Yep.
When you're dealing with your customers or whomever, they've taken their approach is very intentional.
Yeah. And like I said, but that's even including the methodology that's at the national level, even including all of that, the added cost that they're saying to meet the same requirement is, I believe, for the National Home Builders Association, they're saying is around $8,200. So you look at that like 6,700, 6,800 from the Department of Energy, and you look at that one, and they're pretty close to each other. So then it's a matter of how you account for the savings, you account for cash flow, and so forth. But I mean, for most homes, that's the difference between granite countertops and not granite countertops, right?
Right. Another thing that they were talking about that they mentioned was that the code updates that the city they thought had previously been on kind of a 6-year cycle. But we didn't update the energy code the last time we updated the regular code, right? So this is a 6-year cycle for the energy code. Is that correct? Or am I wrong?
No, so the reason that they didn't update the energy code is because we advocated to adopt the 2021. It's through COVID, it's just taken a lot longer to get there than we had hoped. Because when they adopted the 2018, they left energy code alone, knowing that we were talking about updating. Because if we had updated to 2018, I think everyone would have been like, okay, we're done, you know, all good, nothing more to look at. But you're correct. Yes, the all the codes regionally are done on the agreement is that those are looked at on a 6-year cycle.
Okay,
I would say my hope though is that with in an ideal world, Kansas City adopts the 21 right away here in the next month, and then we begin a conversation regionally about adopting 24 2 years now from now, so that the entire region can update to even the next one. That's kind of my idealist hope for the future.
When were the energy codes last updated?
They're updated on a 3-year cycle.
So but we didn't do 2018. Did we do 2015?
No.
No. Okay.
No,
so
we've been on 2012 since 2012, and then the 2018 was the 6-year update. And again, that's where we held back the energy code so that we could leapfrog to the 21, which basically that's because the 2018 functionally is almost identical to the 2012 in terms of energy. So
this is not speeding up the energy code update. This is actually
it's behind.
Granted, we're behind.
Yeah,
and we asked for that, but
right.
But we're behind.
It's given 2 years of leeway where everybody can still build like it's 2009.
Yeah.
Party like it's 2009.
Then the other question that they were pointing out in the discussion was this thing about master plans, and that they had approved master plans for houses. And if they had to change their master plans, it would just be a lot of work. But I'm thinking, why wouldn't you change the master plans?
Well, and I mean, I was a little unclear about which master plans in particular, and maybe Andy, you can shed a little light on if these are specific areas or whatnot. But to me, maybe there's a way to do an exception for already approved buildings like this, or to allow it to at least keep to the same framing structure. I think that can be dealt with separately and not have to be the tail wagging the dog.
I was under the impression that what they were is like when you have a subdivision and they have 6 housing styles, they just approve 6 housing styles, and then you can cookie cutter them however often you want to.
I'm pretty sure that's what those master plans are for. They just didn't elaborate on which master plans where.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, those master plans have had two bonus years of not having to comply with the 2018, let alone the 21.
Yeah, and they can see that this is coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, those were the things that I noticed in the listening in on the conversation and being a zero expert on the details.
Yeah, and I think to your point, yes, I think the master plans can potentially be treated as a separate animal. Yeah, and then we try to continue with or with a code with no weakening amendments would be my personal preference.
Okay. The commission, I mean, this is kind of our opportunity. We have one more window to take another another shot at this and submit another comment. Are you guys game for doing that?
Yep.
One.
And Andy, just so I haven't ignored it or not said it, I thought Jeff Williams did a good job when he was pressed on why are you weakening this, to say we were asked to look for alternatives for ways to kind of right size this for us, and that's what we've done, and I think that's totally fair. What they've done is found these couple of proposals that are fairly minor in terms of what they're asking for compared to what I frankly expected coming out of that. So I think they've done their due diligence, and
I
now,
think they're doing
it's a decision that can be made.
right. They're doing their best to accommodate what the council questions are that are coming at them. Obviously, they're receiving a lot of pressure from BOMA and others, and you guys are doing your fair share, putting some pressure on things. I'm whispering in the ear here in City Hall, and so I can only imagine. I know Jeff Lee, he's looking a little stressed, but hey, welcome to the club. I mean, I've got a climate plan I want to get across the finish line. We got this balanced energy resolution we'll talk about here shortly. So, hey, it's just part of being in City Hall.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carol, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's fine. I need to know if there are any commissioners that would want to move for us to submit an additional comment in response to the discussion that occurred today. Or if we want to just leave, go ahead.
Well, this is Carol. What kind of a comment would we be making?
The points I think we could make is we could reiterate that we would like it to see it without weakening amendments. And we could reiterate, our support for adequate staffing, and we could reiterate, we haven't reiterated, we could say whether or not we felt like it was reasonable to ask for master plans to be updated after a period of 9 years or whatever it's been since they were last updated. And it's the normal thing about how building codes have to address changes, and how important it is to the city, what an asset the built community is to the city. The housing stock in particular is a city asset that makes a huge amount of difference in the viability of a community over time. And so, there's a great argument for keeping these codes current. And again, if approving these master plans is a problem, maybe they space it out. Maybe they figure out a way to accommodate that. So, so that would be, I guess, basically what we would put in a letter. We would reiterate what we have said before. We would acknowledge some of the things that were forwarded in this meeting as far as the staff reports, and it would just be one more comment that they would get from us. I think that we would probably try to address the practical issues that were discussed at the hearing, rather than simply saying that it's an imperative because of the climate change. We would actually speak to some of the building code implications. Does that make sense? A lot of the testimony that was presented at the meeting was presented primarily from the perspective of climate change, and less from the perspective of energy efficiency and the benefits to having energy efficient construction over time, that kind of thing. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
I think we should do it, but I'm not volunteering.
Well, I will volunteer to do it, but I will have to have a little support from Jeremy and Andy and people who have the expertise to fill in these blanks regarding these kinds of questions that I was asking about what the amendments would mean and what the staffing requirements might be and how you might update master plans, all those sort of things. I mean, we're not going to provide all the answers, but we need to at least be knowledgeable in the way we present the comments.
I support that too, Carol. I would want us to do something to ask for those codes to be. I think at any point, the city's got to figure out how to staff anything, any changes. And we're not going to say we'll never change anything because we're not able to staff anything new. So we just have to figure out how, yeah, what is the fabric of the city and what do we want to be in the future and how we're going to staff that.
Well, what is the sense of the group? We have a motion and a second. Can I see a show of hands for those who would support doing that?
Yep.
Let's see. Hands. Oh, I can't really see that. Okay, so we have a hand for
up. My hand is up.
Okay, so do we have 3 yes votes?
Yep.
Okay.
And this is Carol Mack, and I think that I'll need to abstain from this.
Okay. So, Jensen, where are you? Marty's up.
He was a yes. He was up, and now it's down. But
Okay. So does it pass? I can't see the hands on my thing. Can you see it, Ann?
Yeah, I saw at least 5 hands at one point.
Okay, so I guess that would pass. We will work on it. When we get something drafted up, we'll send it. But it'll have to be quick. So it'll come the end of the week. If it's just not at all what you guys have in mind, then red flag it right away. If it's close, then we'll go with it. Okay. Everybody nod yes. Okay. Let's record the abstention, please, for Carol.
You're all recorded as it is. We got it.
Okay.
Carol, I'll add my email to the chat here in case you want to bounce technical questions off of me.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Actually, we definitely will. So.
I thought you might.
All right. The next item of business is we have the Environmental Achievement Award discussion, but Andy, I'm going to turn that to you as well as the OEQ report.
Okay.
I'm sorry, before you switch gears, do you need me for any further agenda items?
No, thank you. Unless you just are curious.
I am, but I've got the Climate Action KC board meeting to get ready for. So I'm going to stop here and get ready for that.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Carol, you want to start with the Environmental Achievement Awards?
Yes, or you
Okay.
can fit that in however it works best for you.
Yeah, we'll start there. Not a lot to say to that. I think Laura sent out a response to Molly and you about the number of nominations or applications we received, which were 3, and they were all around people who bike to work. So the question, I guess, for the commission is, we can certainly continue to try to solicit applications internally, could delay review of those and or any particular award ceremony another month or so, just depending how long we would choose to wait. Or, another option is to forego the award ceremony this year. But so far we've been trying, loosely internally, we've been looking for projects outside of our office, and there may be a few that are in progress, but nothing complete enough to really call it a project to submit an application for. So that's the general state of where we are right now with this. So just kind of want to ask the question, Molly, Carol, what your thoughts are, Commission?
I had thought we let it go a little bit longer. You and Laura always have a good sense of what's out there in the city percolating and have pushed several over the line.
Well, and that we've been trying to do that. And I've even talked to other staff that are out in the facilities, doing inspections. And the dilemma that we have is obviously you've got some projects that are in the works, but we've had our fair share of turnover, right? So we've got people who moved on, left the organization. Still, some of that's been going on. So there's just, we're in a state of flux. It's the best way to describe it right now. So it's hard to get any place where there's some stability to where there's a project that's ripe for an award nomination.
I would not be opposed to taking a year off if we had more, if that meant we would have more and better, more complete ones next year. Anybody else feel that way?
I would support that if that's the desire of the group.
I agree as well.
Sounds okay to me.
Yeah, and I'll vote with you guys as a group.
Okay. Well, Andy, it sounds like we have a kind of consensus on that. So.
Okay. Yep. Appreciate it.
We
All
could,
right.
It's been an incredibly busy year for you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and it's the same throughout the organization. Everybody's trying to adapt to kind of a new environment, work environment, new executive team, all new directors for most departments. I mean, there's just a lot of change going on right now. So I appreciate it. This buys us some time, and we'll double our efforts next time around and get some good applications.
Okay.
Okay, so Oeq Report, I can hit this fairly quickly as well. We'll start off with resolution 220442. That is otherwise known as the Balanced Energy Resolution. That had been held for a couple of weeks by Councilman O'Neill, who introduced the resolution. And this came up again today in committee, and strangely enough, the committee, the mayor, who's the chair of the committee, in consultation with Councilman O'Neill, decided to move it out of this particular committee and move it to neighborhoods. So I'm not sure the rationale for that. I was tuning in. We were originally told that it was just going to be held 2 weeks. So myself and then, well, Carol, you were there, and Michael. We were told it was going to be held 2 weeks. And then when I got back to the office, I went back and tuned in and went back on the video to see what they were actually going to say in the committee meeting. And it was when I watched the video that they didn't really talk about a hold so much as moving it out of this committee to a different committee. So where I once thought that this resolution was sort of dead on arrival, it's back again. O'Neill is not letting this go. It's just being moved over. I did hear him make mention that he's going to talk with Councilman Robinson on this, so I think she's probably trying to do a little coaching on the side and maybe try to assist with this somehow, shape or form, because there doesn't seem to be that he's got a lot of support for this resolution. So we'll see. So keep you posted on that one. We've already talked about the energy code. So that one, I will keep you all abreast of what happens with that. It'll either show up again next week or maybe 2 weeks on hold on that one. So we'll see. And to complicate matters even more so, I it looks to me, I just found out while I was in the energy code conversation that I have at least 2 sponsors for the climate plan. So that resolution we drafted, we've got sponsors now. So law department supposedly got it in under the wire to introduce it on tomorrow's docket. So keep your eyes posted to the clerk's page. It could show up in committee next week. Now, I don't want to make any promises in the sense that was really hoping to get this in front of a business session. So I can capture all of the council in one seating and do a full-on presentation for all of them. In order to make that happen, we would have to put a hold on the committee meeting for next week. So the committee meetings happen on Wednesday, business sessions happen on Thursday. So I'd almost have to hold the committee meeting on Tuesday or on Wednesday in lieu of the business session on Thursday. So the dilemma we have, unfortunately, to complicate this even further, is the neighborhood rebuild grants are now going through business sessions as well. So council is hearing the various grant applications, the recommendations from staff on those applications. And so Forrest Decker is doing the presentations on those in business sessions. And tomorrow will be the first round of presentations on those grant applications. So they're doing 2 or 3 different rounds of awards on the grant applications. So gonna have to see how this works out. You know, I've got my request in with the city manager who helps organize the business session schedule, and not sure that where we can fit in on a business session. I'm going to basically go forth through committee through the regular legislative process, and or can you squeeze this into a business session, and then we'll bring it back to the committee for them to vote and push it to full council. So 2 different avenues on this. I'll know more in the next day or 2 where we go, but good news, first step in the process was getting a council member to support it, and it looks like Councilman Lohr, who's the one that initiated and sponsored the original resolution, the 05 resolution from 2020, has agreed to go ahead and co-sponsor, and looks like Councilman Boo will be one of the co-sponsors on this as well. So there may be others, we'll see, but looks like it's going to happen this month, hopefully. Any questions on any of those things? Climate plan? Okay.
That's great.
Last thing, well, let's see, what else I got here? Oh, Solarize campaign is going along pretty nicely. We've got about 380, or I guess we're up to about 390 people have signed up for their free assessments for solar on their properties. Most of those are residential. There's a few commercial in there. We do have some interesting meetings set up with some investors that have considerable number of rental units that are interested as well. One of them owns, I couldn't fathom the size of this, but I think one of them has at least 800 houses that they own and rent out in Kansas City. And so they're interested in trying to bring solar to these rental homes. So I had to double check with that. I was like, are you sure that's what you're meaning to do? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So we're going to meet with them and see what we can do to help facilitate that as well. But of the 390 assessments that are going on, so far we have contracted somewhere around 10 to 12 contracts. And I think we're in tier 2 pricing right now. And if you remember from the presentation, we've got 8 tiers of pricing. Each tier gets lower in pricing the more people that contract for solar. So we're at 87 kilowatts contracted so far, which pushes us into tier 2 pricing. And all indications show that I'll be in tier 3 pricing by the end of the week. So moving right along, we've got some people who are interested in the Tesla Firewalls. So we've got a few that have contracted to add the Tesla Firewalls to their houses as well. So that's going along pretty well. We did a solar town hall yesterday. So I don't know how many people were sitting in on that presentation, but we'll be doing more workshops and some tabling events over the course of the next couple of months to continue this campaign, which ends at the end of October. So that's what's going on there. Other than that, staff we're kind of, as you can see today, a lot of folks have been taking vacations this month, in and out. So other than that, we've been working on reporting, and I know, Jerry, you remember the good old days of doing your CDP reports. We're working on the CDP report again. And so staff has been working through that process. I've been working on EPA's, every year we have to report to EPA on our renewable energy as part of our partnership with them. So got all my numbers together and looking pretty good. We've got, if you look at all the energy we used for last fiscal year for the city, compare that to the amount of renewable energy that we used from our wind farms and from the solar on our facilities, it came out to be 23% renewable. So pretty good. That doesn't consider the fuel blend, of course, that we get through the usual fuel mix from Evergy for all of our facilities, but just strictly talking renewables, we're at 23%.
Congratulations.
Way to go.
What else? No, I think that's all I got for now.
Well, as you're doing all these reports, Andy, since if we're not going to do an environmental achievement award, we might try to do another little communication of some kind that highlights some of these achievements that we've been able to accomplish through the work of the Office of Environmental Quality.
Okay, yeah.
So you could just start making a little list.
Yeah.
Or a long list.
Well, and that's the thing is we definitely try to take it to communications. We take it to the city manager and hope that something, gets broadcast out there through communications. That's the procedure that we're in now. So as we get the reports back from CDP and EPA, last year we did really well with the EPA one. We were at 14th overall of all the cities reporting. We came in 14th on the list on renewable energy. Unfortunately, even though we had the press release drafted and EPA had given us all kinds of media materials, it didn't get released. So we'll hope this time around we'll get a press announcement on that. But they've been supportive of, like I said, the Solarize campaign. There's been some press announcements. When we get the CDP score back, we'll certainly press on that because that's looking pretty favorable as being a good score as well. So. And the other thing, Lead for Cities, I brought it up several months ago. Lead for Cities, we're still working on that. I've got a whole plethora of interns with us this summer. We've got 3 interns in the office this year. So we've put them all on that one project just to help us get us over the finish line on that. So anyhow, and an update on Jerry's old position or the current position, the sustainability coordinator position. We did put that out on the street. We did receive applications. HR provided us an eligibility list, which was extremely short, and we decided not to go forward with interviews based on what they provided to us as candidates. So we needed to kind of revisit the job classification for a sustainability, what we call a senior environmental officer position for the city. So we're essentially rewriting the job description to incorporate a little bit broader definition of what a sustainability professional is. So you're capturing not just the environmental sciences, but could include others that have expertise in other areas to address sustainability. So, city planners, et cetera, et cetera. We need to broaden that up because when those job descriptions were drafted originally years ago, which I can attest, I was involved with drafting them back 25 years ago. Back then we were thinking more about compliance than we were about sustainability. It wasn't really, the in thing at the time. So we drafted what we thought would get us what we needed. And so clearly we need to change that today. So anyhow, that's, so hopefully we'll get, we're going through the process with HR to make some revisions there. As usual, things are slow when you're dealing with a bureaucracy like the city, but we are not giving up hope. We're hoping to be able to repost that position before too long.
Okay, I'm going to give a quick air quality report. At the meeting yesterday, they reported that the ozone season was going well, that we had had no alerts and no violations. But then on the other hand, they reported that they were looking at 6 weeks of hot, dry weather. So some great news and then some not so great news. Do we have any old business or new business to come before the commission? Marty.
Yeah, I yesterday I was out doing some cleanup in the yard, and I noticed 3 people were walking through the garden or through the yard. I have an invitation for them to walk through, and they exit toward the neighbor's house, and then and I waved at one of them, and he waved back and smiled, and so people are admiring the yard. And then later on yesterday, I received in the mail. It says, "Thank you for investing in our city by residing and or owning property listed above. The city of Kansas City is dedicated to promoting health, safety, and welfare of its citizens, and to protect neighborhoods from deterioration. In this spirit, we have established standards about how properties are to be maintained. An inspection of the property referenced above, which is mine, blah, 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 blah." Anyway, I have rank weeds in my yard, and none of which I consider rank or weeds. And nothing is said about the carbon that I have drawn down, or my plants that I have allowed to grow have drawn down and hold in the soil. There's, it's just, here it is again.
Who's it from, Marty?
Well, people, somebody, a neighbor of mine sent me, you can look online and see who's listed, who's been complained, and against, and you can see it. And my neighbor said, "You're on the list." And I looked at it, and it said grass too high. Well, I have only a little stand of grass, which I consider recreational, or it's more like I like it, and then there's some 12-foot tall grass in some other yards that's not considered. It's over 10 inches. I mean, this makes no sense. And then if I want to have them come out again, I have to put up $50, non-refundable application fee. This is ridiculous. I've never used to have an application fee necessary, so they're putting the onus on me, and I'm guilty until proven innocent. And I'm not about to change this. I'll go to jail, and we're working on it, and there's supposed to be some code stuff happening for next spring. But here I am before that, and I'm not going to cut it. So there you are.
Marty, is the card officially from the city?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it says.
And so the people walking through your yard were inspectors?
Oh, no, they were citizens.
Oh, okay.
Because they wouldn't have had time to get there and mail this thing to me. I found this in the mail. So, yeah, and it says it's from Neighborhood Services Department, Neighborhood Preservation Division. And at the top, it says order to remove nuisances, none of which I consider nuisances.
And I get those all the time, Marty, and you're right. They come and you're going to get a bill and you'll get a fine. And if you don't go to court, that like, you know, they want you to appear. And if you don't appear, then they'll attach a fine, and the fine will continue to go up until you pay it or until you show up. So, but even if you
I'll
go,
raise all kinds of hell.
yep. I mean, I hear what you're saying and I understand what you're saying and I get those, I mean, I don't understand how somebody could come and graffiti my wall this weekend at West Side and I'll get a notice on Monday or Tuesday. It is, I don't know how, like you say, there's a house down the street that's falling apart and the weeds are 10 feet tall. And I don't know what's happening over there, but I can tell you that as soon as I have a weed that's, you know, 3 feet tall or some graffiti on my building, I'm getting a notice immediately. And yeah, so codes people are working actively in the West Side, I know, and there are probably other neighborhoods that they're actively working, but it does feel, yeah, like it's too much sometimes. And I don't have a lot of extra money to pay it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't know if
So that's,
Yeah.
that is just, I
Hey,
just want to
Andy,
warn you, that it doesn't get better, it gets worse.
this may be out of the scope of this meeting, Andy, but I am curious if when people call 311 or go online more so nowadays, does that automatically get routed to something like this is a codes complaint rather than it's just someone in the community trying to alert the city of something like, hey, there's vandalism on such and such a property?
Yeah, no, so yeah, you call 311, they open up a case and it's routed to the appropriate department. So, you know, if you have a neighbor complaining about your property, it gets routed to neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. So the online application, there's an online app to do this as well. Not as widely used, and actually the usage of that's going down, but most are coming in through the calls still.
Yeah, and they don't have to leave their name.
Right.
So you have an accuser and you don't know what their axe is that they're grinding.
Yeah.
All you know is that it's aimed at your neck.
Well, and I apologize for that. And it's frustrating for me to hear these stories because, you know, there are, you know, Forrest and some other folks keep coming back and like, you know, where are we with the nuisance code revision? And, you know, there's only so much time in the day to do what I can do. And so I'm trying to get the climate plan done, which will back up our nuisance code claim, you know, revisions. And we have other things we got to get it done so we can get back to this. But what bothers me is that, you know, they seem supportive of what we want to do on the code revision, but yet I could see that the enforcement side is coming down harder. And I think what's going on.
I don't get it.
No, and I think what's going on, Marty, is there is a new division manager in neighborhoods that was just promoted to that position. And I don't wonder if in his orientation towards this position, the inspectors are responding to him, you know, so I don't know. There's something going on there. So
Well,
I'll keep working my angle on this.
Also, I want to let you know that I received 3 letters. One was to me, one was to my wife, and one was to my grandfather who died in 1954, but who's still on the water bill, I think. So, you know, they had to go get 3 different people, you know, to send this letter to in order to harass the right one. I'm sorry, you know, and I know you're working on it, but I don't have $60 to pretend. And so I will go to I'll go to the newspaper or whatever I have to do. I mean, or the media that I know.
Well, have you started with the inspector first? Have you had a conversation there yet?
No, but I did last year when I received some sort of a thing. And
I know, but that one we got it taken care of, right?
Yeah, but he didn't do it.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. We need to do the same thing again.
Well,
make contact with the inspector. I'll talk to Forrest and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, it's DeAmos, and he's on, and I don't have anything against him at all.
Yeah.
You know, but he doesn't have. Yeah, you know what he doesn't have. Never mind. I get it. I
We
just,
cannot let the Lorax go to jail.
well, you know, I can see that that might have some publicity benefit. I can take a cane and do it too, you know. hobble into jail.
Are there any other comments from people who are still with us? Molly?
We just got to get moving. The pile is deep, but we got to get to codes.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate you listening and letting me rant.
I have a different situation. I have a neighbor who doesn't have everything grown up, but he doesn't live in the house, and he doesn't want to maintain the lawn. So he sprays his backyard with about 5 gallons of Roundup every couple of months to just kill it. And it's just sort of the opposite of you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to live next to that because it's either a mud pit or it's full of toxins. I'd love to run over there and get some of that soil and see if there's anything living in it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Codes.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that, Molly. I feel like that's certainly a tactic that we don't want to encourage.
Right.
But it could very well be the next easiest thing to do.
Yeah, and as a consequence, he's got water in his basement, but he's got an old French drain and no downspout. And I'm offering to help him, saying, look, these are easy things to fix, but if you also kill everything in your yard, there's nothing to suck up the water either. But anyway, it is an interesting opposite to Marty. Rather than letting everything grow tall, I have a Roundup factory next to me. And I will say that my beloved cat, my third son, best behaved of all of them, died of an extremely rare type of liver cancer that is associated with Roundup. Can't prove it, but.
Well, you could present him with a legal document. This is going in my record, and if I die of cancer, you're going to get sued.
Actually, we can't discuss this on public record.
Okay.
I'm trying to be a good neighbor.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I understand.
Are there any other comments, or shall we adjourn? Thank you all.
We're good.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Molly, I'm hoping you'll be hearing people right away about the report, and I will, Andy and Jeremy and whoever else you think, I'll run the letter by you guys first, probably try to get it out by tomorrow sometime, and let you guys fix it with correct information, and then we'll send it out to the group and see if there are other concerns.
I've sent the report to you guys. You guys can disseminate it to the commission.
Okay. Well, we need to be sure that it goes out with an invitation for them to provide input. And
right.
Andy, if you want to, I'll write that so that you'll have something handy. Okay. Everybody have a nice evening.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.